King Charles has never been this absolutely furious, not once in his entire reign. Stick with me here, because Harry and Meghan crossed a line so incredibly personal that the king responded in ways nobody saw coming. Meghan literally went public and accused Charles of things so dark and inhumane, the world is still struggling to process it all. And Harry, he stood there and backed every word. Charles heard it all and then he made his move. Harry got thrown out completely, and the palace is already replacing him with James the young royal literally nobody expected. Things just got incredibly ugly and nobody was prepared for what came next. A silence that basically said everything. King Charles III flew into Washington, D.C. in 2026 and did something that stopped the world cold. He refused to see his son. Harry was 40 minutes away. Just 40 minutes, basically, a quick drive to the grocery store. And Charles did not just decline a simple visit. He had his team build a massive state itinerary, completely around the fact that Harry would not be included. Palace officials locked the schedule weeks early. So when Harry's team quietly reached out through back channels begging for even a tiny private meeting, the answer came back instantly: no conditions, no alternate plans. The request was entirely rejected, and Charles definitely did not do this quietly. He did it right in front of the most powerful political city on earth. He sat right there with White House officials. He moved through Washington with the massive full weight of the British state right behind him. Every diplomat in every room Charles entered understood the message instantly. Harry holds zero value to the British crown. He is just a private citizen, and his physical proximity to the king means absolutely nothing anymore. The international press caught the absolute devastation of that moment instantly. But here is what the world had not fully realized yet. Now pay close attention here. To know why Charles drew that brutal line in front of the entire planet, we have to rewind to November 2025. You really need to understand what Harry actually did on the absolute most sacred day in the British military calendar. And once you finally grasp it, that silence in Washington will make complete and total sense. Remembrance Sunday in the United Kingdom is without a doubt the single most emotionally raw day in their entire calendar. The king stands at the cenotaph in London. Absolute heavy silence falls completely over the massive crowd. Wreaths get placed for the brave soldiers who went to war and never made it home. Their names are read aloud one by one, right in front of a grateful nation that absolutely refuses to let them be forgotten. In 2023, and again in 2024, Harry and Meghan respectfully honored that exact day. They visited Camp Pendleton. They met face to face with American service members and grieving Gold Star families whose sons and daughters tragically died in heavy combat. They paid their deep respects. Then came November 2025, and Harry completely shattered that golden rule. He literally went to a wild party instead. The night before, Remembrance Sunday, Harry and Meghan attended Kris Jenner's 75th epic birthday celebration at Jeff Bezos' massive Beverly Hills estate. The guest list was a literal Hollywood fantasy. Adele, Beyoncé, Mariah Carey, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Snoop Dogg, Mark Zuckerberg. Harry arrived wearing a slick black tuxedo and, pinned right to his lapel, was a remembrance poppy, that iconic small red flower worn across the United Kingdom to deeply honor the war dead. In the heavy days leading up to the commemoration, he wore the sacred poppy. He went to the party anyway. The couple walked in holding hands. Cameras were literally everywhere. A Hollywood source said it super plainly. If Harry and Meghan genuinely did not want the crazy attention, they should have slipped in the side door like Beyoncé and Jay-Z. But Meghan loves the flashing cameras. Now, let that sink in for a second, because this gets genuinely painful. Harry is not just some privileged royal who skipped a ceremony. He is actually a real combat veteran. He served 2 brutal tours in Afghanistan. He flew those Apache helicopters as a co pilot and a lethal gunner in Helmand province, easily one of the bloodiest, most intense combat zones of the entire war. He has publicly detailed firing on live Taliban targets. The brave soldiers being commemorated at the cenotaph that very Sunday included the actual men who had fought alongside him in that exact province, in that exact same brutal conflict. Some of them literally came home in wooden coffins. Their names were being read aloud in London while Harry stood on a flashy dance floor in Beverly Hills, wearing their sacred flower on his chest like a cheap costume piece. When the photos spread online and the massive backlash exploded, the Sussex PR machine went into absolute panic mode. Harry and Meghan reportedly demanded that Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner immediately scrub every single image of them from all social media. Their officially stated reason, leaked super carefully to sympathetic media outlets, was that they wanted to show deep respect for the fallen soldiers by not appearing in wild celebratory settings during a national period of mourning. Kim actually addressed the sudden removal publicly. She said they strictly took the photos down to respect Remembrance Day and casually suggested people should just laugh about it sometimes. The furious reaction from London, however, was totally something else entirely. Top royal experts said if the couple truly respected the solemn occasion, they would have completely turned down the invitation before entering that house. And trust me, you and I know military commentators were far less forgiving. Stick with me because you and I are about to dive into a detail that makes this entire scandal so much darker. Before that infamous Sunday party, secret insiders behind the palace walls were actually trying to fix things. They were quietly plotting a massive peace treaty between King Charles and Harry. Secret talks happening. They wanted Harry to have a totally private off the radar meeting with the king at their hidden royal estates. No cameras, no press. Insiders fought hard for this truce. But that flashy Hollywood party completely destroyed it. Game over. The palace finally saw the truth. To Harry, the crown's most sacred traditions meant absolutely nothing. They were just a cheap tool. Something to use for public relations survival, then instantly toss away the very second a glamorous distraction appeared. Fast forward months later, Charles stood in Washington, D.C. just 40 minutes from his son. And he chose absolute silence. Not because he hated Harry, but because Harry already made the fatal choice for them both. Right there on a Beverly Hills dance floor, wearing that poppy. But while Charles kept quiet, nobody realized the absolute storm brewing. Meghan was doing the complete opposite. Her entire empire was burning to the ground, collapsing right in front of her. And she already picked her perfect scapegoat. Meghan pointed her finger straight at the top. She blamed the king. She came up with an excuse for her crashing empire. And honestly, it is the most insane, arrogant thing she has ever claimed. Her Netflix shows are not stalled due to bad content. Her deals are not dying because Hollywood got sick of her. Watch closely, because this is where you're going to lose your mind. Meghan claims she is actually delaying projects to respect King Charles III. She says she is terrified of upsetting him, deliberately freezing her own projects just to protect the royal family's fragile reputation. Let me translate this absolute madness for you. Meghan is basically telling the world that her cooking show, her lifestyle brand, literally everything is on pause right now because she is way too busy making sure she does not offend the king. That is the story she is selling. She claims she knows exactly how Charles ruins people who cross him and she is supposedly terrified of being his next victim. But the irony is not the worst part. The permanent paper trail is. Back in 2022, their massive Netflix documentary aired, leaking private family group chats, secretly recorded phone calls, and super hidden moments that the royal family absolutely never consented to share. Then, in 2023, Harry's book Spare leaked brutal family fights and private, medical secrets about living relatives, deeply personal conversations that were meant to stay behind heavily locked doors. Back when those deals were printing money, royal standards vanished. Nobody protected anyone. The entire institution got ruthlessly dismantled live for a global audience while the couple cashed a massive check. So, suddenly playing the royal loyalty card now, right when their huge contracts are getting cancelled and the industry realize their brand is totally overpriced and empty. That is not noble restraint. It is a straight up lie. The receipts are everywhere. Let's pause for a second. We both know this cooking show excuse is just the newest chapter in a blame game that gets way worse the further back we look. During that explosive Oprah interview, Meghan dropped a bomb about her pregnancy with Archie. She claimed senior royals actually sat around discussing exactly how dark her baby's skin would be. And she did not. Just drop it as a random comment. She weaponized it, linking it directly to two massive events happening simultaneously. Archie was suddenly denied a royal prince title. Archie was stripped of high level security. She painted this as a vicious pattern, a calculated chain of decisions made by powerful elites who were terrified of what her child might look like. Harry actually backed her up, confirming those talks happened, but he refused to name the culprit. He just called it awkward, admitting he was completely stunned. Later, Oprah clarified that Harry promised her the Queen and Prince Philip were definitely not involved in that mess, which left a permanent, highly public shadow of guilt hanging over the remaining senior living royals. That single accusation shattered the internet in mere hours. And the craziest part, they never took it back. Not once. Not even a partial apology. Then, in that exact same interview, Meghan dropped a confession that made the entire world freeze. She revealed that behind those golden palace doors, she was mentally crumbling in the darkest, most terrifying way imaginable. She desperately went straight to the royal bosses, begging for help. She confessed she was having very dangerous thoughts. Thoughts of ending it all, yes. She made it crystal clear to them. And how did the powerful institution react? They looked right at a woman begging for her life and coldly told her that getting professional psychiatric help would damage their perfect royal image. Meghan then turned to Harry. She sat with her husband crying and confessed she simply did not want to live anymore. Real constant thoughts. So, how does this end? Trust me, you're going to want to see what's next. Stick with me here. We're about to uncover the insanely dark moments those public cameras totally missed behind closed doors. Situations insiders have since described as genuinely terrifying. There are solid reports that during this intense period, Meghan would lock herself inside rooms, completely alone, sometimes screaming, sometimes crying so hard and for so incredibly long that staff nearby literally had no clue what to do. And whatever dark thoughts drove her to that breaking point, she wouldn't share them with anyone. Her mother, Doria, eventually discovered the absolute truth, and the heartbreaking way Doria described that moment tells you exactly how bad things truly were. Doria admitted it absolutely shattered her. She said, hearing that her own daughter had reached the devastating point of simply not wanting to exist, and knowing she couldn't smash through those massive palace walls to protect her was a completely unbearable weight for any mother to hold. But the palace fiercely fired back. They claimed considerable professional resources had been offered to Meghan and that she actually had completely rejected the help. They stood by that defense firmly and repeatedly. Even today, nobody knows the full truth. But one detail is clear. Meghan never backed down or took back her words. She just continued to blame them. Then comes the devastating miscarriage accusation. This one is the absolute least discussed, but easily the most heartbreaking piece of all. In the 2022 Netflix documentary, Harry directly stated that he firmly believes Meghan suffered a tragic miscarriage strictly because of what the Daily Mail did. The Mail had published a highly private letter. Meghan wrote to her estranged father during her pregnancy, triggering a massive lawsuit and bringing weeks of soul crushing stress and terrible sleepless nights that Harry said he helplessly watched destroy her. He admitted they couldn't know for certain, but he stated clearly that he fully blamed the media pressure for their child's loss. Now, pay close attention. This is exactly the part that makes this significantly darker. That exact same documentary exposed that the specific letter to Meghan's father, the very letter, the Mail, published was actually written on the direct advice of Queen Elizabeth II and then Prince Charles. The massive institution Harry blamed for the intense media pressure that he believes caused the miscarriage was the exact same institution that literally guided the action, creating that horrible media storm in the first place. And then, as recently as March 2026, palace insiders described what they openly called genuinely terrifying behavior. Sunday Times reports exposed that Harry's camp was aggressively pushing for enhanced security arrangements, specifically so he could bring Archie and Lit over to visit the king. A solid source stated Harry already lost his court security case and was now actively weaponizing the threat of the king's grandchildren, never seeing their grandfather again as a harsh coercion tactic. The exact phrase used was pure emotional blackmail. The palace said it was truly appalling, and every single explosive accusation was broadcast globally to the world through one single person, Oprah Winfrey. That 2021 interview pulled in 17 million American viewers. It was the most watched, highest stakes celebrity interview in absolute years. But today, that interview is considered an absolute toxic asset inside Hollywood. And the specific reason for that is completely clinical. During the broadcast, Meghan boldly claimed she and Harry held a private garden wedding ceremony 3 days before the massive royal wedding. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the actual man who conducted the ceremony, stepped up and stated clearly and publicly that the only legal valid marriage was the highly public one on May 19th, 2018. There was absolutely no private garden ceremony. For someone whose entire brand relies heavily on pure truth, on being the real journalist who uncovers what is actually real pushing. A provably false claim is a brutal wound that won't close. You and I know how bad that looks. Oprah has since moved to a position of complete permanent distance from the royal couple. Industry insiders clearly describe it as a firm, do not mention arrangement. The absolute most powerful woman in American media, the one who gave Meghan the massive platform that launched this entire thing, has quietly and thoroughly walked away. That silent withdrawal isn't just significant, it is the ultimate verdict. And While Meghan was busy building her giant case against the king, literally every single door in Hollywood was slamming shut at exactly the same time. It was an epic collapse nobody saw coming. There is one legendary name in Hollywood that nobody messes with: Harry Emanuel. The guy runs William Morris Endeavor, the most dominant talent agency on earth. His client roster reads like a crazy who's who of untouchable power. Dwayne Johnson, Mark Wahlberg, Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams. Emmanuel has spent literal decades absorbing the absolute worst of Hollywood's worst behavior. The insane screaming, the dark threats, the midnight meltdowns, the impossible demands. He has sat across from the most volatile, insanely destructive nuclear level personalities this wild industry has ever produced. And he has never once blinked. Managing unbelievably difficult people isn't just something he tolerates. It is the exact foundation he built his massive empire on. And then Meghan Markle walked through his door, and within 2 short years, he completely threw her out of it. Meghan proudly signed with William Morris Endeavor in April 2023. Her agents were Brad Slater, the exact guy who handles Dwayne Johnson and Jill, Smaller, who handles Serena Williams. This wasn't just some standard business arrangement. This was Meghan loudly planting her flag at the very center of Hollywood power. But trust me, you and I just watched that exact power vanish. Stick with me here, this scandal is wild. Every door would fly open, every single deal backed by the most feared talent agency on the planet. But that dream? It lasted less than 2 years before totally collapsing. Sources confirmed by January 2024, Harry Emanuel had not sat in the same room with Meghan for a single meeting in months. Then came explosive reports of a massive outburst that very same month. Meghan had aggressively demanded an urgent meeting. She walked in expecting perfectly crafted plans to just be waiting for her. But when they absolutely were not the room, felt the sheer crushing weight of her anger. One insider pointed to that exact moment as the absolute tipping point when Ari was done with her. But being done is not the same as gone. Emmanuel held on until Thanksgiving 2025, when Meghan did something that killed the deal forever. She demanded the agency staff actually cancel their Thanksgiving break to manage her personal crisis, not postpone it, cancel it entirely. She wanted nonstop crisis management on one of the most sacred American holidays. From a dedicated team who had actual families waiting for them at home and Thanksgiving turkeys literally going cold on their tables. Dan Wooten reported exactly what went down inside the agency when that demand dropped. One insider said it with absolute brutal clarity. This is a massive company used to handling the absolute biggest celebrity divas on the planet. But when it came to Meghan, they just looked at each other and said, enough is enough. Our staff deserves a real Thanksgiving. And they told her she was gone, dropped just like that. Now pay attention here because this next detail makes the whole thing even more devastating. Meghan Markle has spoken publicly about Thanksgiving with genuine warmth on so many occasions. She even described it as being one of her absolute favorite American traditions, a beautiful celebration of family gratitude and pure togetherness. Yet, she demanded her staff entirely sacrifice the exact same holiday she treasures for herself. The hypocrisy was so raw, so completely unhidden, that even the loyal people inside the agency who previously defended her simply could not look away. And the brutal consequences, they hit immediately and they hit hard. One top industry insider pointed straight to the absolute most damaging fallout: The bitter dispute between Meghan and Netflix, which exploded into a massive public scandal spreading across the entire industry press, that never would have leaked if Emmanuel was still her main agent. His massive power would have buried the story before a single journalist heard a whisper. Without him, every single crack in her whole operation was suddenly visible to the entire world, exposed, totally defenseless. And then the media vultures started circling. The whole Netflix deal was already rotting straight from the inside. Hyped projects that got announced with massive excitement were either totally dead on arrival or buried so deep in development hell that nobody could ever find them. Meghan's luxury lifestyle brand dropped with the name American Riviera Orchard, a title so aggressively aspirational it practically dripped with pure self-regard. But then, brutal trademark disputes ripped that name right away, forcing a desperate rebrand to the much less glamorous title as ever. The show itself with love. Meghan dropped with reviews ranging from painfully lukewarm to quietly brutal. The exact same audience, once electrified by her dramatic royal grievances, sat down to watch her cook jam and felt absolutely nothing. You saw this crash coming, right? The Spotify deal was already dead. That $20 million contract got terminated in 2023 after producing basically zero real substance. Top Spotify executive Bill Simmons didn't soften his brutal verdict when he addressed the total disaster publicly. He straight up said the company felt completely cheated. He stated it plainly, zero apologies given. By ED 2026, there was absolutely no Spotify chapter to reopen, no broken relationship left to repair, and no version of this story where spending that kind of money made sense. Every single door was slamming shut, and the worst was still approaching. Now look at Prince Harry's speaking fees, because honestly, these raw numbers tell the downfall story way better than any commentary could. At his peak, Harry pulled $300,000 to $400,000 an appearance. By 2026, his fee at one corporate event in Australia plummeted to just $50,000. That is an insane collapse of over 80% of his market value in under 5 years. The Montecito estate alone eats about $1 million annually in mortgage and maintenance. And that massive figure doesn't even include their private security detail, the staff, luxury travel, or any of the heavy infrastructure required to sustain their shiny public presence. At this current rock bottom rate, Harry's speaking income barely covers half the total estate costs before a single other lifestyle expense even enters the picture. The math isn't difficult here. It simply does not work. It has not worked for a very long time. The luxury brands made their final choice quietly. Elite houses like Dior Gucci and Balenciaga reportedly handed out polite rejections to every partnership proposal from the Sussex camp. These fashion houses build their value on absolute permanence and timeless elegance. The last major royal figure they successfully aligned with was Princess Diana, a legendary woman whose identity was built purely on grace, sacrifice, and tragedy. The Sussex identity, built mostly on endless grievance constantly shifting, narratives, and a massive credibility problem the industry completely stopped trying to politely ignore. Association with the whole Sussex brand wasn't an opportunity anymore, it was a massive risk. So, what do you and I take from this? That Sussex sparkle is completely gone. People inside the entertainment industry were now whispering about the dreaded Sussex stain. At this point, every single door was slamming firmly shut. Every former ally had quietly backed away into the shadows. Things were getting incredibly desperate for Harry and Meghan. Then they made a choice. Stick with me here because there was only one twisted way left to climb back up. Use their own kids. After 5 years of speeches and loudly telling the whole world he would literally die before ever selling out his own children. Back in 2021, Harry viciously sued a photographer for taking aerial shots of Archie playing in their private garden. He took it straight to court and won. He gave passionate speeches about the psychological destruction that massive media exposure causes young children. Directly from his own painful childhood trauma, watching his mother, Diana, get constantly photographed and absolutely devoured by a ruthless press. They treated her life with utter contempt. He aligned with advocacy groups, arguing that posting kids' images without full consent is a fundamental human rights violation on every level. Fast forward to 2026. He flew out to Canberra standing tall before Australians. Politicians heavily lobbying for much stricter regulations regarding children's content on social media. He framed it all as critical child protection. He presented himself as the ultimate authority, someone who understood deeply exactly what that toxic exposure does to a fragile young life. But the man delivering that righteous speech, his own team was actively uploading videos of Archie and Lilibet straight to Instagram just to keep their lavish lifestyle financially afloat. Australian journalists definitely noticed. They exposed it. Now watch this closely. The guy lobbying to protect kids online was literally monetizing his own children on those exact same platforms. The real reason wasn't complicated at all. Their money had dried up. On April 5th, 2026, Meghan posted Easter. Yesterday videos straight to Instagram. Archie and Lilibet racing through their massive garden on an egg hunt. Lilibet wearing a breezy summer dress and pink bunny ears walking totally alone with her basket. Meanwhile, Archie sat at a table decorating eggs with a felt-tipped marker. The comments got shut off before anyone could even reply, but the internet tore that footage apart anyway. Archie and Lilibet appeared to be the exact same height, despite being almost 2 full years apart in age. One sharp eyed viewer pointed out that Archie hadn't visibly grown a single inch in 3 years. Another claimed he actually looked smaller, not larger. In that exact same clip, Lilibet appeared totally barefoot in what clearly looked like warm summer weather, while Archie wore a thick jacket meant for the freezing cold. One confused user wrote, "She is barefoot and dressed for July, while he is bundled head to toe in October winter gear in the exact same frame." A separate skiing clip posted earlier showing Harry and Archie on the snowy slopes had already sparked fierce debate about whether that footage was just stitched together from totally different recordings shot at different times. Die-hard supporters defended the clips. Critics absolutely refused to let it slide. But the observation that went viral and hit way harder than any of those strange visual inconsistencies, you're probably thinking the exact same thing I did. Why are these kids always completely alone? No friends? Zero? Cousins, literally no extended family visible anywhere. Just two tiny kids wandering around an enormous luxury estate with their mother, talking them from a distance with a camera, while their grandmother's voice faintly cheered them on from somewhere off screen. Comments brutally described them as the absolute loneliest children anyone had ever seen on a public platform. Someone wrote that the most heartbreaking moment in that entire video was watching Lilibet wander through the garden totally by herself, knowing full well her own mother was right there choosing to film content instead of holding her hand. Meanwhile, on that exact same Easter Sunday, George Charlotte and Louis attended the traditional Easter Matin service at St. George's Chapel over in Windsor. They walked proudly in public, procession completely surrounded by their parents, their grandparents, Princess Anne, and the entire assembled working royal family. They were clearly inside something bigger, connected, surrounded by deep roots, rich history, and family members who would be there, long after every single camera had been packed away. The visual contrast between those two sets of royal children on that same Easter Sunday, it did not need any explanation. It was painfully visible and completely final. Harry had spent years aggressively building an iron wall around his children, using absolutely every legal and public weapon available to him. He fiercely argued for their privacy in courts. He campaigned for them during countless speeches. He built his entire modern identity around being the ultimate protector father who would never let his mother's tragic fate happen to his own kids. But by the spring of 2026, sheer financial desperation accomplished what no court or press ever could. It actually made him tear that protective wall apart himself, brick by single brick, just to sell the view. And while all of this madness was unfolding over in Montecito, in London something entirely different was happening. Something quiet. Something the royal palace never officially announced or celebrated. Something that instantly made every single Netflix deal, every loud accusation, every Instagram post, and every legal filing completely and permanently irrelevant. Trust me on this. The institution found its replacement, and the sheer speed of it was the absolute most devastating message of them all. This silent replacement, the absolute most brutal thing the British monarchy ever did to Harry and Meghan, didn't even make the major headlines. There was zero dramatic announcement, no public humiliation, absolutely no. Stick with me, you and I are about to witness the ultimate betrayal. The palace did something absolutely devastating. They cleaned out the exact spot Harry left behind, found a new prodigy to fill it, and just moved forward. Absolutely ruthless and completely smooth. By February 2021, Harry and Meghan lost all their royal patronages. Organizations that proudly wore Harry's name for years, they were quietly handed to other patrons. His military titles, his honorary roles with the Royal Marines, the Royal Air Force, Honington, and the Royal Navy's diving units. These were serious roles, where real soldiers and service members deeply respected him. But they stripped them away and gave them to others. His name completely vanished from state occasion programs, from official royal engagement records, literally erased from every single document that defines the working monarchy. Then, in April 2026, the 100th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth hit with a massive state commemoration. It was exactly the kind of massive event that Harry's fans swore would be his epic comeback moment. But his absence, it was not discussed at all. Nobody mourned it. Just a single line of text. The whole event just moved on. For years, Harry was sitting on what he thought was ultimate leverage. His logic basically went like this: King Charles had purposely slimmed the monarchy down to a much smaller working faction, meaning fewer active royals were available to carry out the public daily duties. The state visits, the massive charity work, and those ceremonial appearances that keep the crown visible and relevant to the public eye. Harry truly believed this gap would force the palace to beg him back. They would quietly come and offer him a sweet deal to return, thinking the institution secretly desperately needed him. He totally held on to that delusion for years. But you'll want to see this. An 18-year-old stepped in, and Harry's leverage vanished overnight. His name. He is James Alexander Philip Theo Mountbatten Windsor. He holds the official title Earl of Wessex. He is the son of Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. He is the very youngest grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. But here is the detail that seriously hurts. James is the first grandson of the Queen, born in 23 years. The last one, yeah, that was Harry. James grew up entirely in Harry's shadow without even realizing it. He's now standing right in Harry's spot without ever asking for it. James was legally entitled to be called His Royal Highness Prince James from the exact moment he was born. That absolute right was always his. His parents chose not to use it. And the reason Sophie gave in 2020 cuts right to the absolute core. She said they were raising their kids with the harsh understanding that they would absolutely need to work for a normal living. So those big titles stayed on paper. James grew up without a massive crown over his head, never assuming the world owed him a single thing. He was raised to earn his place. Meanwhile, Harry was raised thinking his status could never be snatched away. That one difference explains literally everything that has happened to both of these guys. Now look at what James has already done quietly: no paparazzi chasing him, and absolutely zero Netflix deals. Funding his life. I know what you're thinking: how young is he? Back in 2022, when the Queen passed, James was only 14. He stood absolute vigil beside his grandmother's coffin at Westminster Hall. He stood in dead silence right alongside Prince William, Harry Peter Phillips, and Zara Tindall, while the whole planet watched him. In 2023, he attended the epic coronation of King Charles III. By March 2024, he was literally the only younger generation royal who actually showed up for the massive Easter Matins service at St. George's Chapel. He's 18 now, holding the absolute legal right to formally claim that His Royal Highness title that has literally always been his. But he hasn't rushed to claim it at all. Palace insiders have specifically pointed this out. This is a young guy feeling absolutely zero urgency to grab what already belongs to him. Deep inside the palace, the entire strategy built around James has an official name. Insiders are calling it the doctrine of continuity. The master plan is to position James as everything the Sussex brand destroyed itself trying to fake, while Harry and Meghan turned the whole monarchy into a dramatic stage for personal grievances, those strategic leaks and endless media wars, keeping them locked in the center of the drama. James represents a rare weapon the institution almost forgot it could create. A young royal who just shows up quietly, does his duties and goes home without burning a single thing down. Several commentators have compared his absolute composure at formal occasions straight to the late Prince Philip. Prince William views him as a totally critical institutional asset. Princess Anne, Edward, and Sophie have built an absolute wall of support around him that hasn't cracked even once. This isn't just a family desperately trying to patch up a wound. This is a ruthless institution finding its ultimate upgrade and fully installing it. Every single argument Harry made about the palace desperately needing him totally dissolved the second James stepped up into those public duties and performed them. Without one complaint, zero conditions, and without some production company filming the whole thing. The final numbers confirmed what the palace secretly knew. You and I just witnessed a masterclass in replacement. The monarchy's approval hit its highest point. Let's dive into this wild royal scandal. After the Queen passed in 2022, the British tabloids that made absolute millions on Sussex drama just completely pulled the plug on them. Why? Because the public entirely stopped caring. The massive cash grab for Sussex headlines crashed and burned in the United Kingdom. At the exact same lightning speed, it failed. Over in Hollywood. Now watch closely here. The fans vanished, the media bailed, and the royal family had already checked out before those two even realized. Harry and Meghan. This isn't some family drama time will magically fix. Their old office is completely empty. The nameplate is ripped off the door. The person sitting at their old desk actually earned that spot through quite hardcore loyalty. The monarchy honestly did not punish Harry. They didn't chase him down, didn't publicly trash him, and didn't waste one single second crying over what he decided to throw away. They just kept moving. And trust me, you and I know the worst verdict they could deliver is one no lawsuit can ever reverse.